This week, the Justice Minister, Ronald Lamola, presented his annual report to the Portfolio Committee on Justice and Correctional Services, and amongst the many things that were presented, it was clear that the remission policy, in other words, letting people out of jail earlier than their sentence stated, is the best way they see of reducing the overcrowding issue in South Africa's prisons. Our prison occupancy rate stands at 128%. Glynnis Breytenbach speaks on these matters for the Democratic Alliance and joins us now on the phone line. Glynnis, good morning.
Good morning, John. How are you doing?
I'm not too bad, and yourself?
Okay, thank you.
I mean, let's try and set aside the deep suspicion that the early release of Jacob Zuma and the broader remission program are not entirely de-linked, and just speak about remission programs in general. Are they a reasonable way of dealing with overcrowding?
Well, absolutely not. What we're talking about here is a remission program that allows convicted criminals to be let out of prison before the sentence that a competent court has deemed appropriate has been served. The 147% overcrowding problem is largely fueled by remand detainees. So remand detainees are people who have been arrested and are being detained pending a trial. So for all intents and purposes, they're innocent until proven guilty. These are people who have not yet been tried. There are 48,000 of them in prison. These are people who have, in most instances, in the largest majority of that 47,000, have been granted bail by a competent court but are unable to pay it. So they're not regarded as a flight risk. They're not regarded as a risk for society. They have been granted bail for all intents and purposes. They are unable to raise the bail money, and so they remain in prison. Those people have not yet been tried. They are innocent until proven guilty, and a large portion of them are not being held on serious crimes, which is why they haven't been regarded as a risk by a court. And yet they remain in prison, they remain incarcerated, awaiting trial, while convicted criminals are allowed out early because that's easier for the minister and the correctional services to deal with.
So the numbers, Glynnis, if the vast majority of those remand prisoners still in jail because they don't have the money to pay the bail which has been granted, if they were out of prison, that would, if my understanding of the numbers is correct, that would effectively wipe out the overcrowding situation. The jails would be full, but not overcrowded to the percentage that they are now.
They would, in all probability, still be overcrowded, but to a vastly lesser degree than is currently the case.
And how does one deal with the issue of people being unable to pay the bail which a court has decided is appropriate?
It's a desperate situation. Many of the people, a good percentage of those who are remand detainees, have bail being granted for 5,000, 2,000 and 1,000 or less. And their inability to raise, let's say, 5,000 rand keeps them incarcerated, often for longer than a year, awaiting trial.
But I mean, what to do about it? Because you said that one of the problems, if I may, one of the problems of early release is that the court decided that a particular sentence was appropriate, and here are administrators saying no, the sentence is no longer appropriate, but a court has decided that a 5,000 rand bail is appropriate, and so you can't wish that away. So what do you do?
Well, you can't wish it away, but the Correctional Services Act has a provision in it that can be used and is very seldom used by correctional services to bring those inmates back to a court after a period of, say, 2 months or 3 months of them being unable to raise the money, so that the court can reconsider whether they want to reduce the amount of bail or not. And sometimes that amount of bail is appropriate and it can't be reduced, and sometimes it in all probability will be reduced. But what South Africa really needs is a bail fund. A bail fund is a publicly funded collection of money that is used specifically to fund bail. And once you've stood your trial, you come back with your bail receipt, and the money goes back into the bail fund. And many countries have such a bail fund. And the Justice Portfolio Committee, the most successful bail fund is run in the United States. And the Justice Portfolio Committee was due to go to the United States on a study tour to learn about the cybersecurity legislation and also how they set up and run their bail funds. But the Speaker of Parliament decided that it was more important to send some members of Parliament to go and watch the Rugby World Cup than it was for the Portfolio Committee to go and do some work.
As always, thank you to Glynnis Breytenbach for joining us on the radio this morning, the DAMP and member of the Portfolio Committee on Justice and Correctional Services, the Shadow Minister in that portfolio.